Something that I think that isn't talked about enough is why you would pack one thing versus another thing based off of the type of photography that you do. As an example, I recently posted a video about what was in my everyday photography kit, and it got me thinking about other times I'm required to pack bags with equipment. Today, I want to talk about how I pack based on scenarios other than street photography. I'm going to talk about the equipment that I bring when I'm traveling, specifically for pleasure and not for work. Because when you travel for work, you may bring different items than when you travel for fun. So let's start with the bag. This is the Backpack by Douchebags. It is a 20-liter bag that looks more like a regular backpack than a camera backpack, which is why I like it so much. No one really notices it outside of the color. Inside of this bag, you can get an optional camera insert, which I did. I opted for the smaller insert rather than the large one because it would limit how much gear that I would bring. I did that because no one really wants to carry a heavy bag up a hill with all of their lenses and equipment. The limitations that you set for yourself can really help your back. The camera that I opted for this year is the Fuji X-T5. I opted for this versus my X-E4 for a couple of reasons. Mainly because it has a couple of other options that the X-E4 does not have, and mostly because I want to keep the X-E4 for my daily life, and I wanted something a bit more rugged for travel. On this camera, I have the 18mm f2, and this is my favorite lens for Fujifilm. This lens has a love-hate relationship on the internet because it's imperfect, it's noisy, it's soft, but it renders images the way I want them to be rendered, and that is the reason why I keep it on this camera, maybe 60% of the time. Next is this lens. This is the 35mm f2, and I opted for this lens rather than getting the 1.4 because I thought this lens was going to be smaller, but as it turns out, they are basically the same size. So I have no qualms against the 1.4. This is the one that I own, and it takes great images. I use this probably 25-30% of the time. It's a very normal lens. It's going to make everything look how you see it, and it's great for taking portraits on the street as you go. Next, we have a lens that I practically only bring when I travel. It is the 55-200mm Fujifilm lens. The reason why I like to bring this is because it does a lot in a relatively small package, and it covers any of the extreme focal lengths that I would need outside of standard travel photography. At 55-200, it's more similar to a 80mm to 300mm lens, so it has that reach when I really need it. Depending on where I travel and what restrictions there are, I try to bring a drone with me for those epic shots from above. My drone of choice for travel is the DJI Mini 3 Pro. Since it is so small and so light, I can put it in my bag without even feeling it on my back. However, that does come with an asterisk. You need to have batteries with your drone, and along with that, a controller. So these are the two items beyond the drone that take up more space. Thankfully, I've left room in my bag for items such as these outside of the camera insert. Next up, I've been bringing a film camera with me, and I used to bring SLR style cameras like the K1000 or the AE1, something that is robust, very heavy, something that's going to stand the test of time because it is so well built. But because it is so well built, it is extremely heavy. So, as an alternative, I started bringing this camera with me. This is a Fujifilm point and shoot camera. What makes it special and I think more useful than maybe some other point and shoots is that it has two focal lengths built into it. It has a 28mm lens and a 45mm lens. So that gives you that wide to close coverage that I need if I'm doing standard street photography. It's also extremely lightweight, and it slips right into the bag like this. Outside of standard things like having a nice microfiber cloth in your bag, I've been bringing a small digital point and shoot camera, but this year I have two options. On my channel, I've talked about this camera several times. I got it for $20, it's the SD1000, and it takes those nostalgic photos of my youth, and maybe some of your youths, without taking up any space at all. I keep this in the top of this camera bag because I want to be able to access it as quick as possible. Sometimes I just leave it in my pocket because it is so small. However, I recently also picked up this camera. This is a digital point-and-shoot camera, but it has more capabilities than the SD1000. It is the Nikon Coolpix P7100. It's an old camera, the autofocus isn't very fast, but what it does do is take raw photos. The reason I like that is because I can take those photos home and edit them more thoroughly than the JPEGs that the SD1000 offers. It is a little bit heavier, but it has a great zoom range, and it's something that I can also leave in the top pocket of this bag or around my neck. Beyond all of that, I'm going to talk about one of my favorite items, which I have before, which is this power bank. And there are lots of brands that do this now, but this was unique when this came out. It has the built-in cables. It has your USB-C, your USB micro, your Apple Lightning. It's a 20,000 milliamp hour power bank that can also charge by plugging it into a wall, which means you don't have to carry extra cables or an extra block with you if you want to charge this, or if you want to charge things on the go. I don't know about you, but several times I've left the correct cable at home and had to buy them on the road. This mitigates that. The weight of carrying this in your bag does not equate the weight of not bringing a cable and having to figure one out in the middle of nowhere. So this, like many other What's in My Bag videos, is situationally based. This is what I would bring when I'm traveling for myself, for pleasure, for fun, rather than something that I would do professionally. However, there is going to be some crossover, and things will change based on where I am going, for how long I am going, and what I intend on doing when I am there. I may end up bringing more gear based on where I'm going, or less depending on weight limitations. All in all, I just wanted to show you an idea of what it is that I bring with me on a regular trip, a week long somewhere, and to give you an idea of what you could bring similarly for when you were traveling. I want to say thank you for coming along, and let me know if you have any questions or if you want me to do any reviews on some of the gear that I described. And until next time, adios.